Yeah, Mr. Kim. Ah, straw showing every year.
Oh, Kusia, a member draw, Ghana Limited for Akofaba, the Piasso Committee, and they said because so much madam for Adolf. And what Chairman said, a draw a Mr. Kill, Nico on her, and he said, no, no, so
it's since time I am 1 million, and running down the books as I your back.
Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill.
Come in.
Yeah, I don't have say that here. Mr. Kill. You should back up. And not the crowd. You know, maybe the men come out. Mr. Kill. Oh, yeah, Kill back up.
I give you all a boy could give you.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another edition of The Couch with me, Ama Pratt. Now, last week we shed light on Cameroon. We had people from the English-speaking side of Cameroon come to shed light on their understanding or their interpretation of the issues in Cameroon. Now, they have been labeled as separatists. They refuse that. They call themselves revolutionaries, reformists, you know, all of that. And we're happy to listen to that and appreciate the Cameroonian situation. Now, this evening, we are zooming in on Congo. You know, we want to understand the history because as we are learning from this show, from all the interviews we do on this show, we are learning that nothing is for nothing really in Africa. Whatever present situation there is, it always has undercurrents from the past. And so we would want to understand the history of Congo. We would like to understand present day, you know, what is happening, dictatorship, Kabila, all of those issues. Of course, the wealth of the Congo and its significance in all of these happenings. Now, this is a show you do not want to miss, if for nothing at all. Education is important that we educate ourselves because it's the only way we can better understand the issues and form our own opinions, and then perhaps, you know, find our place in all of this, what we can do in all of this. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Congo is like a nightmare in heaven.
The crisis in Congo started with a complex political tumult following Belgium's granting of Congolese independence in 1960. The associated violence has claimed an estimate of about 100,000 lives, including the nation's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, and UN Secretary Dag Hammarskjöld, who was killed in a plane crash as he attempted to mediate the crisis, escalating with the secession of the southernmost province of Katanga. The conflict concluded 5 years later with the United Congo emerging under the dictatorship of Joseph Désiré Mobutu.
Morally control your mind.
Are we going to have to wait for 20 more years before somebody does something to stop this Holocaust?
There's a global consensus that exists that says it's okay for nearly 6 million black people to die in the heart of Africa and for us to be silent. The affairs of the Congo have not been determined by the people of the Congo. The national boundaries were formed at the Berlin Conference in 1885 when Congo was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property.
People can say anything, but the Congo is still a police state. There is no freedom of the press. You hear people being killed. The army is not an army. You know, this is a bunch of people who are indisciplined, who still roam the streets.
But all this 125 years must be taken into consideration to fully understand why Congo is in a weakened state today. If we look from 1885 to 1908, we're talking about personal rule, enslavement. From 1908 to 1960, colonialism, Congo under colonial rule. Congo finally elects its leader in 1960, and in 61 was assassinated. So we have assassination. Then a dictator was put over the people for another 3 decades. So now we have dictatorship. Then an invasion was backed from outside with Rwanda and Uganda in 1996 that Congolese people suffer from to this day. So we have 125 years of this. Now what that does is it destroys and eviscerates the Congolese institutions.
Since 1996, the conflict in Congo has claimed the lives of an estimated 6 million people. Today, neighboring governments continue plundering by using proxy forces to displace entire communities for access to the land.
It has nothing to do with ethnicity. They killed Congolese like they were flies. You see how people, you feel a mosquito and just hit? That's exactly how they killed. It did not mean anything to them how they were killing the Congolese, as long as we can just wipe them out and get access. I mean, the mines exist. People used to live in those areas. Have we ever asked who was living where the mine was before? Did the mine just show up? No, there were villages where those mines were.
Rape happened to be one of the weapons that worked the most, because as soon as you destabilize a community, you rape the entire village, the women of the entire village, in front of the children, in front of the husband, in front of the neighbors, that community is broken completely. Because the men cannot look at the wives in the eye and say, we were unable to protect you, and the women cannot survive that trauma.
Congo is one of the worst places in the world to be a woman or a girl. And one of my recent trips to Congo, I met up with a young girl who was 15 years old. She had been violently raped by one of the rebel groups, and she had been held for 3 months in a hole in the ground, in a pit, naked. And every day, another combatant would come and rape her. She was only 15. She realized at one stage that she had fallen pregnant. And then they killed her best friend who was in the pit with her. There were 2 of them. And she had to stay in that pit with the body for 6 weeks, unable to climb out of the pit, knowing that she was pregnant and still being raped day in, day out.
They reduce you to a non-human, in essence. People are being reduced to a non-human so that they cannot think. They can feel powerless. They can feel hopeless, so they can give up.
This young man is being thrown down the bridge and shot twice. As to what he did wrong, we do not know.
Along with the growing culture of impunity.
If you don't hold to account those who carry out these horrible atrocities, it leaves the door open for them to do more.
Paul Kagame, who led the Tutsi rebellion and was now in charge of Rwanda, saw these militant refugees as a threat to Rwandan national security.
He came to Washington, D.C., and essentially said, if the international community is not going to do it, we're going to take things into our own hands. The U.S. had no official response to that, which he interpreted as a green light.
When you see these prescriptions coming out of Washington and they say, well, we've tried everything, you know, we support peacekeepers, we've had peace talks, it's usually within the parameters of maintaining the current order.
This has serious implications in terms of what people don't talk about, U.S. foreign policy. That's where the problem lies. It has something to do with the United States and Great Britain supporting strong men in Africa rather than supporting the people.
Now, it's easy to point fingers and to pin the blame of these problems on others. Yes, a colonial map that made little sense helped to breed conflict. The West has often approached Africa as a patron or a source of resources rather than a partner. But the West is not responsible for the destruction of the Zimbabwean economy over the last decade. Wars in which children are enlisted as combatants.
But now, Obama, when he went to Ghana, he had a huge speech, you know, that really woke up Africans. You know, he was very harsh. It was almost as a dad telling the kids, you guys need to get your act together. You know, you can't have election here and sprinkle some elections there and call that democracy. That was good for him to say that, saying that, you know, he's demanding that there are some accountability for political leaders in Africa. But he said something that still sticks with me today. He said that America is ready to support strong institutions, but not strong men.
Africa doesn't need strong men. It needs strong institutions. As for America and the West, our commitment must be measured by more than just the dollars we spend. I pledge substantial increases in our foreign assistance, which is in Africa's interests and America's interests. But the true sign of success is not whether we are a source of perpetual aid that helps people scrape by. It's whether we are partners in building the capacity for transformational change.
So, there are a whole series of things that can be done, keeping in mind that the ultimate solution is going to come from the Congolese people themselves. Our role on the outside is to make sure that we create the space for them to solve and address the challenges that they face. Half of those who have died as a result of the conflict are children under the age of 5.
There are currently 15 African countries involved in war, or are experiencing post-war conflict and tension. In West Africa, the countries include Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Togo. In East Africa, the countries include Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, and Uganda. Let's look at Central Africa. We have Burundi, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Rwanda. In North Africa, it's Algeria, and in South Africa, Angola and Zimbabwe. At the base of these wars is the rich natural resources each of these poor countries hold of timber, oil, or diamonds, compounded in many cases by the foreign extractive industry's presence. But in the wake of this, we rather hurt ourselves instead of fighting for what belongs to us. We spill blood, sending cold chills down the spines of sympathizers. When will Africans put aside conflicts and concentrate on building an authentic solidarity that cannot be broken.
Welcome back from the break, viewers. Now, if you are like me, then some of the images were a little disturbing, but sometimes we need to, you know, face our reality, understand what it is, and move on from there. Well, like I intimated earlier, today we are talking about, you know, the situation in the Congo, DRC, and with me in the studio is the spokesperson for the Friends of the Congo. He also happens to be a human rights activist, and if you watched the video carefully, I'm sure that you came across him not once, twice, you know. We are very privileged again to have with us in the studio Mr. Kambale Musavuli. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the couch. I hope you are comfortable. You know,
yes.
You are good. Because you're just going to have a conversation. You know, we're just going to have let's start with the documentary that we just watched. You had a few, you know, corrections to make. If you could just.
Yes, I think it's important for the listeners, the viewers, to know that the documentary is a few years old. It's 2011 that it was released. Over 6 million Congolese have died in the conflict. And
6 million.
Over 6 million.
Over 6
million.
Yeah,
the statistic
and in the
that I'm quoting.
documentary we said thousands.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the deaths, I think it doesn't grasp the head of people what that actually means, because we have some African countries, they do not have 6 million people as a population, like for the case of Gambia. So when Africans hear that there are 6 million deaths, they need to be outraged an organization to stop the killing, because they are our brothers and sisters. The other was around the people involved in the DRC. The conflict in the Congo started in 1996 with the invasion of 2 U.S. allies, Rwanda and Uganda. They invaded the Congo twice, in 96 and 98, and have continued to support proxy rebel militias inside of the Congo. But with the second invasion of the DRC, that involved a few African countries, but they were divided into two lines: a line that supported the government in Kinshasa in the west, and the line that supported the invaders, Rwanda and Uganda. So you had about 15 countries around 2002 who were actually inside of the Congo supporting the two sides of the conflict. They signed peace accords. Some of the countries retreated, but as I mentioned, Rwanda and Uganda have continued over the years to play the role, usually point out the role of King Leopold II. When you think about King Leopold II, who was at the center of the Berlin Conference, being the middleman for access to Congo's resources in 1885, right now, with Congo's wealth, we have, unfortunately, African governments, specifically Rwanda and Uganda, who are allowing Congo's resources to leave the country while the population in the country are suffering great loss, seeing their loved ones being killed, assassinated, or sometimes pushed to exile.
Great. And you have given us a bit of history even with that, but I still want, you know, the average Ghanaian viewer, including myself, to properly understand the history. Now, our experience was with the British, you know, and so we knew what that was like. Others' experience was with the French, sort of assimilation, you know, we know what. But let us perhaps understand what the Belgium situation was like. How was, and I'm sorry to take you off a little bit, I just need to understand this as a bit of background, you know. How was colonialism like with the Belgium? How different was it perhaps from the English, from the French? How was that like?
So we have to take it even further. 1885, when European nations sat down in Berlin to cover up the African continent, that meeting was actually called the Congo Conference. It wasn't called the Berlin Conference. So European nations didn't just sit down to cover up the African continent. So when you actually read the Act of Berlin, you will see Congo mentions quite a few times in it. They took a land that all of them wanted, but they gave it to a man. And that man was King Leopold of Belgium. So while other nations, as a government, took land for their benefit, but one land was given as a private property to the King of Belgium. But under his rule, and the land that was called at the time the Congo Free State, not because the people on the land they were free, it was mainly a free trade zone. In the Act of Berlin, they actually wrote that any Western powers had the freedom of access to the river and the land of the Congo to extract any resources that was on that land. So that's the original configuration of Congo. So when Congo was created in 1885, it was never created as a nation state. It was created as an outpost for extraction, and that configuration never ended. So after a global outcry, because it took ordinary people around the world for Congo to be taken away from King Leopold, because of the mobilization organization, we have people like William Shepherd, first African-American Presbyterian missionary to the Congo. He went to the Congo, saw the atrocities that were taking place, where Congolese were being butchered. Their hands were being chopped off if they could not extract a specific quota or rubber. But it was a black man from the United States who traveled to the Congo before Facebook, before Twitter, got on a boat for 3 months, ended up there, saw what was taking place, and he was actually the person taking the pictures that we now see of the people with their hands chopped off. And with his work, there are other George Washington Williams, another black man from the United States, a Civil War veteran, who actually coined the term crimes against humanity. People use that term, but they don't know who used it first. That he wrote a letter to the U.S. president at the time saying, why was the United States at the time supporting King Leopold? Most people don't realize that the United States was actually a country that signed the Act of Berlin, and they actually supported King Leopold access to the land. But global outcry helped in removing Congo from King Leopold. But the mistake was they never gave Congo back to the Congolese. So on November 15, 1908, Congo was given to the Belgian. So what the Belgian government then at the time inherited was this extractive outpost that they could use for whatever they needed. So under colonialism from 1908 to 1960, what did the Belgians do? For World War I, the copper was taken from the Congo. For World War II, the uranium used to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki came from the Congo through Belgian hands. And we even also had the Congolese in the Force Publique, which was the military force at the time. They fought in World War I, they fought in World War II under Belgian rule. But even that military, the configuration from 1885 to when we had independence, was never to protect the population. It was always to make sure, one, the resources live, the colonial rule still control the states, and the population is still subjugated to inhumane conditions. So when we look at even archival footage of the independence movement, you will see a Force Publique soldier beating the Congolese who were mobilizing.
You took me right to my next question, because I wanted to understand independence. I wanted to understand, post-independence. And your history is particularly interesting, considering that, your first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, is assassinated just a year, after he, and obviously that can't be, for want of a better expression, smooth for any country. You gain independence, because we had Osage for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah for a while. Ghanaians still lament that perhaps if he had stayed on longer, our situation would be different, better. And we complain about that. But you didn't even have him for up to a year. So that makes your situation a little more interesting. For me, you could just comment on that for me briefly.
I'm glad actually you bring up that aspect, that I'm visiting Ghana and I'm reading and seeing Kwame Nkrumah's legacy here. He had a vision of electricity across the country. He had a vision of having a port. Him having that vision, that today I'm in Accra, I'm seeing that vision actually manifest itself. But there is something even much more important. 60 years ago, Patrice Lumumba was in your country here. Yes. Right? When he was here, he was part of the Pan-African Congress. He also had the same exact mandate. So when they met with Kwame Nkrumah, one of the missions that Patrice Lumumba and the Congolese delegate who participated was to go back to the Congo, take control of the Congo, make sure that we actually have a dam on the Congo River to have electricity that will be provided to the entire African continent, and make sure that the resources of the Congo benefit the Congolese people. So imagine if Kwame Nkrumah's vision has manifested itself and Patrice Lumumba's vision was quite similar, what will the Congo be when we say that Congo's wealth is estimated at $24 trillion? That is, the wealth is similar to Europe and the United States GDP combined. And if that wealth was in the hand of Africans, 60 years later, Congo will not be where it is today. So it's not by accident that Patrice Lumumba was assassinated. He was deposed and then assassinated. Kwame Nkrumah did provide support to him. There were Ghanaian troops also who were in the Congo during the time to make sure with the UN operations that there are no funny games in the tackling it. Now, unfortunately, we lost one of the aspiring leader of the Congo. But his vision, Patrice Lumumba's ideas and vision is not over. He was 35 years old when he was assassinated. He wanted a free Congo, a liberated Congo. Young Congolese today are fighting for the same ideals. The challenge that we have right now across the African continent is that many people do not know, in this suffering that we're hearing of the millions of deaths in the Congo, young Congolese are also mobilizing to see a new Congo as well.
Again, sorry to take you off track, but this is for me a bit of housekeeping before we get into the main issues. I just want you to comment on democracy. You know, give me the democracy as pertains in Congo. And I'm asking this question because over time we've had people say that, well, democracy as pertains in the West is good for them. It suits them. You know, that perhaps as Africans we should be looking for our own system of governance that suits us. And here I will make the Zimbabwean example, and I will speak of Mugabe, you know, and the fact that, you know, there's talk of, oh, he's been there forever, and for democracy to prevail, you can't rule forever. And he, I don't know if the statement that is attributed to him all the time is indeed true, because I don't know if in Congo you also have these memes where Mugabe is supposed to be saying things and he says so many things. Sometimes you just know that this can't be him saying this. So I don't know if this statement is attributed to him is indeed true, but it is said that Mugabe once made the example of, you know, Great Britain and said, for instance, that she has been there forever. Why is somebody asking the Queen, you know, when she would give up her throne for somebody else to come? You know, why are you asking me this question? And so for me, this question of democracy, do you think that democracy as pertains in the West is okay for us as Africans, that it's what would work for us? Or do you think that perhaps we should be looking at, you know, defining what some other system of governance that works for us?
Well, you're giving me the answer on your second part of it. Let's go to the first part around democracy in the West, and I will touch on the United States. The United States is not a democratic country. When we have a president in the United States that was not voted by a majority of the population, if we're saying that the exercise of democracy is to have a representative government that comes from the people, that's not what happened in the United States. Right? Donald Trump was elected by the Electoral College. That's a fundamental thing. So we do know for Western nations, they have different form of government that they choose that works for them. What they try to impose on us is a process in either electoral process or a governance process that is not from a particular society within the African continent. But in the case of the Congo, specifically 1960, Congolese youth mobilized to gain independence. Now we organize elections, right? In 1960, Congolese from many ethnic tribes in the Congo voted for a political party called MNC, Mouvement National Congolais. MNC was Patrice Lumumba's political party. So, but there were many different political parties, right? So when I look at the May 1960 election and how Congolese exercised the democratic right through an electoral process, the Congolese people in 1960 said, we believe in a political party that have an ideological notion of transforming the country with the leader Patrice Lumumba. They chose Patrice Lumumba. What the West did was they ignored the democratic voice of the Congolese, and they assassinated Patrice Lumumba and imposed a dictator for over 3 decades. 32 years Mobutu was in power. In the current situation in the Congo, we hear Western nations say the same thing now. We need to go through elections and others. Those exercises does not address the aspirations of the people. The people themselves want leaders who are going to address their fundamental needs, regardless of what we will call the system to be. And whenever the leaders come from the people and the people see that their voice has been heard, the political system will work for them. If you're going to call it democracy, then I will support the democracy. Like if you're going to say that we need to have a democratic process where we have elections and so on, this is not the aspiration of the people, right? What they want to see is the material conditions to be changed. They want to have very basic needs, security, be able to afford and control actually the means that they use to produce in the society. When that's non-existent, we will always have problem. We will be imposed a process that is not African.
Let's now come to present day Congo.
Yeah.
You know, let's come to today, 2018.
Yes.
Let's talk about Joseph Kabila. I want us to talk about Joseph Kabila and perhaps Congo's constitution. You know, and all the nuances and the drama and all of that. Sorry for drama, but yeah.
That's it. Well, so the crisis that we are facing right now has to have a historical narrative, right? So we can talk about the electoral crisis, but we have to actually ask ourselves, how did Kabila get into power, right? We have a person named Joseph Kabila, who in 2001 became president of the Congo. When you read the press and you read the news, this is what they say. After the assassination of his father, Joseph Kabila ascended to power. That's poor journalism. Because for me, I would say that Joseph Kabila gained power into a military coup because Congo is not a monarchy. When the president of the Congo dies, the head of the Senate becomes the president. It's not the son of the president who takes power, who has no political background, who is a former rebel leader, who was in a military force. Well, the history has done is erase actually what happened in 2001 in the Congo. But by him becoming the president of the Congo in 2001, it wasn't because the Congolese people could not fight to remove him. The United States recognized him taking power in the Congo. That reminds you of the coup in Venezuela. Whenever Hugo Chavez had a military coup, it was very quick. The United States had a press conference explaining how they recognized the new government, right? And that kind of mobilized the so-called international community to recognize an illegal government. And they've done that in the Congo. While that's how we ascended in the power, in 2006 we did have an election, a presidential election. When you speak to Congolese, they will tell you that we heard a result telling us that Joseph Kabila won the election. Congolese people don't believe that they actually won that election. The international community said that we had a free and fair election. There were a few issues here and there, right? Yes,
that's
exactly.
My favorite word, incidences.
Exactly. After the 2006 election, in 2011 there was another election. In that 2011 election again, Joseph Kabila was declared the winner of the elections. There were mass protests inside and outside of the Congo. But when you look at now what happened for him to actually gain power in 2011 after the fraudulent election, it was the United States government, the first country to recognize the election. So now today, when we're talking about the electoral crisis, which is based on Congo's constitution, the supreme law of the land, the constitution is very clear. The Congolese constitution says that the president of the Congo can only have 2 terms, and that the presidential term limits cannot be amended. Right now, he has stayed beyond his power. So while I may talk about that he should leave, he should organize, I should always go back to the fundamental point that the political crisis that we have today has no roots in the Congo. It has roots in Washington. Wow, they placed him there and they want him removed. Congolese are still fighting to have a leader that will represent them, but we have many forces outside fighting against the Congolese, and that's the struggle.
For the outside influences, listen, that's a whole chapter of my questions. And so we will come to that. But I want us to, because we have to take a break now.
Yes.
But just brief commentary, calls for him to step down. And then also if you could, in talking about that, if you could just involve the state of Congo's opposition, you know, and if you believe that they are up to the task in challenging Kabila, Joseph Kabila.
So regionally, we've had.
Please, so we could take a break.
Definitely. Regionally, we have Angola, who has been actually, the Angolan president has been very vocal on him to be removed. I should say that for him to step down. The president of Botswana also has been very vocal on that. Very clear that Kabila should step down since his term ended in on December 19, 2016, but he's still there. And we've also had the president of Rwanda speaking, which is kind of interesting if you know Congo's history. But we've also had France engaged in this process also, where Macron, the president of France, is also saying the same thing. But for France, Ghanaians should know, you have Total here, right? They also have Total in the Congo, specifically in the extraction, and also Congo provides France with uranium. With the company Arriva. So France has economic interest in that. So while we see the regional player and international players, including the United States, asking for Kabila to step down, the struggle is still that with the Congolese mobilizing on the ground, the interest of the international community is not connecting with what the Congolese people want. What the Congolese people want is a transition with a leader that we choose. What the international community want is an election with Kabila with a process that will still be rigged.
Eloquently put. Yeah. Well, viewers, we will take a quick commercial break at this point, but you know, when we come back, we would be perhaps looking at the role, you know, of first of all internal players, you know, countries like Rwanda, Angola, you know, what their influence in all of this is. We'll look at the US, we'll look at, you know, France. You mentioned Macron, and so yes, it's going to be very interesting when we come back. Stay with us. We'll take a quick commercial break.
Wonim sɛ wɔka ho ban bɔ wɔn nsɛm sɛ wapake asi ɛkɔta adeɛ wonam kwan so na akɔmfo agye wɔ kaa anaa sɛ obi pɛ sɛ ɛfa biribi wɔ ɔkaa mu abrawani nna hɔ ɛnea wuni haw koraa Bridge vehicle security wɔ abɛɛfo mfidie a wobɛtumi de abɔ ɔka ho ban sɛ car alarm system, mobile engine lock, phone command and notification ɛne nea ɛkeka ho nyinaa. Hwehwɛ Bridge vehicle security wɔ Abeka, Padama Junction, anaa frɛ 0276 293 405 anaa 030 22 456 35. Bridge vehicle security ɔka ho ban bɔ wɔn nsɛm.
The Bridge Kiddie tab is your best gadget option for the kids. It is a real tablet with a lot of educational and entertaining apps. It is very strong and durable. Bridge Kiddie tab, the best learning companion for every child.
Okay, well, welcome back from the break, viewers. You know, I am still getting educated behind the scenes. I am getting educated. I'm enjoying you, by the way. Let me just say that.
Thank you.
And then we can go on. Okay, so yes, I wanted you to give us, you know, you have done that already. I wanted a bit of commentary on dictatorship. We've done that. So now we are looking at, you know, the role of the regional players. And here we are talking Angola, South Africa, Rwanda. You know, perhaps what, because reports said that Angola and Rwandan presidents met with the French President Macron, you know, to talk about Congo very recently. And I want to know, you know, how all of that plays out in the politics of the Congo. So first, let's look at, you know, our African players, and then we can extend the conversation to the US and the French and how all of this is playing out.
So specifically for Angola, we've had a crisis in the center of Congo in a region called Kasai, where we've had over 2 million people in the past 2 years who've been displaced from their home, and they have actually gone across the borders. Some of them are in Zambia, some of them are in Angola. So they've received millions of people in 2 years where they don't have the capacity to actually care for them. So the political instability in the Congo has direct effects in the lives of Angola and Zambia. So while I hear Lorenzo, the president of Angola, being much more engaged, I do understand also why that he's worried that the political instability in the Congo will spread into his country. Similarly to also Rwanda. Rwanda has always been a broker for even Western power, but specifically for France. Before Macron, there was this young man, I'll call it young man, Sarkozy, with whom I have a problem, where he actually proposed a free trade zone in the region for Congo's resources, where Congo should, he actually said it, why can Congolese share their resources with Rwanda? It's very interesting to say that, because it's not about, it's not an issue for Congo to share the resources, right? But it's one thing when your country is invaded and millions of people have actually lost their lives because of these invasions, and then you tell the victim, why don't you open your house so that people can get access to resources? So France has always had that interest in Congo's resources. So that goes to Rwanda's involvement with the discussion is to facilitate the brokering of access to resources in the East. What has been fascinating to me is two things, right? In the past 2 years, there have been two institutions. One is a government institution, and the other is actually an organization, a union. They have been vocal around the Congo. The first one to actually have spoken out was NUMSA, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. They put out a statement about a year or so ago where they actually called for Kabila to step down. I don't see the statement in a vacuum. After they've made that statement, the president of Botswana surprised everyone, the one who was before Masisi. Before he left, he actually also called for President Kabila to step down. And now the current president of Botswana is saying the same. When Botswana is speaking the language, it's from the regional section that's called SADC, Southern African Development Community, a region composed of many of the Southern African countries, that he feels it's important for leaders in the SADC to actually, if you are a president, to respect your own constitution. If you have 2 terms, you should leave. So as he's done that, and they've been Angola, which has done the same. But for South Africa specifically, when we speak about the South African president Ramaphosa, we have not heard him very clear about what is South Africa's government's position toward the electoral crisis in the Congo. But what's clear, South Africa as a country has economic interest in the Congo. When we look at the past administration with Zuma, the Zuma government signed deal to build the Grand Inga Dam that will provide electricity to some of the mining companies in South Africa and some of the business interests in South Africa. Zuma's nephew has an oil block that he has sold to Total, the French company, and there are many South African businesses or businessmen and women who are engaged in the Congo. So when we see that they have economic interest, but the government's position right now at least is not clear about how they will move with the political crisis in the Congo.
I like the economic interest bits, because it takes me right to what I want to ask of next. Let's look at the significance of Congo's wealth, the minerals in Congo. I want us to look at the significance, first of all, for the people themselves, you know, because there are reports of millions of Congolese people in need of emergency care, and that's amazing in a country which is, well, spectacularly wealthy, you know. So first, let's look at that, the significance of the wealth for the people, and then we can look at the significance for the global community. Of course, you know, understanding that perhaps underneath all of the trouble is the wealth. would you say that? Okay, let me not go on. Please go.
Indeed.
Because I tend to go off of my own.
It's interesting to hear.
Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Please go on.
So, in terms of the wealth, that's why it's important to remember the 60 years ago, the meeting that happened in Accra here. When Kwame Nkrumah had the plan of a United States of Africa, when you look at this plan, the capital of the United States of Africa was Kinshasa, Leopoldville. It wasn't by accident that he saw that he believed that if Congo was in the hands of Africans, its wealth will help the African continent. When I look at the African continent today and see where we are as Africans, it's not by accident that Africa is still not where it should be with the wealth that it has. But as I mentioned earlier, Congo's wealth is estimated at $24 trillion.
What?
$24 trillion, which is Europe and US GDP combined. It has the agricultural capacity to feed the entire world until 2050, when the world's population is 9 billion. Yet, we have a humanitarian crisis where people are starving to death. About 400,000 children are starving because of the displacement that happened in the Kasai region right now. Right? It has every known minerals to man. And the wealth, specifically around mineral resources, it has key minerals that's essential to military and electronic industry, mainly a Western nation, and specifically the United States. So minerals such as cobalt. You cannot have a drone without cobalt. You cannot have nuclear reactors also without cobalt. You have a mineral named coltan. Virtually every cell phone, laptop, DVD player, VCR, microwave, pacemakers, inkjet printers have coltan in it. Congo holds anywhere from 64 to 80% of the world reserve of coltan, a mineral that's been central also around the conflict. So, as mentioned, uranium. Also, why France has a river exploding it. Unfortunately, Congo's uranium was used to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Without that, they couldn't have bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but the United States couldn't have done that. But with the mineral wealth of the Congo, with its agricultural capacity, with its hydro capacity, the Congo River can provide electricity to the entire African continent, Southern Europe, and have a little bit left for the Middle East. Yet, many African countries do not have access to electricity right now.
Nigeria, Ghana.
Right. So when we see this wealth, right, and we think about the fathers and mothers of independence and what they fought for in 1958, and bringing all these African leaders here in Accra, the plan was for them to go back into their countries and to gain control. And with Congo's wealth, when we think about, we say that because of its wealth is why it has the problems. I challenge that notion. Why? Norway is resource rich. I'm not hearing Norwegian women being raped and killed and buried alive. Why is it on the land in Africa with so much wealth, we're going to have the contradiction? Right? So it's not necessarily the wealth that's the problem. It's the greed of those who want to access those resources, where they actually believe that they should get it for free. They could care less about human life, and unfortunately, in that process, many Africans are absent in protecting the land. And that's why it's important to conscientize people across the African continent and actually tell them that the Congo movement of today is as important as the South African movement of yesterday was to end apartheid. If we understand that, we will do everything in our power to make sure that Congolese are not dying in millions and that Congo is back in the hand of Congolese so that its wealth can benefit the African continent.
You know what, I just wanted to say thank you. And then I remember myself that, oh no, I'm not listening to you, you know. Okay, let's come straight to the Pan-African project.
Yes.
You know, let's talk about that. And you mentioned earlier that 60 years ago, Patrice Lumumba was here in Accra for the All African People's Conference. This is 60 years ago. Okay, now, I just want your assessment of where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, if 60 years ago, our leaders were thinking of, you know, African unity, and we're taking proper steps to make sure that it happens. Look at everything Kwame Nkrumah did, what he stood for, everything he ever said, you know. 60 years on, at least from when your Prime Minister came to Ghana on that mission, what's your assessment?
Our leaders have been pushed to exile, assassinated, all across the African continent. And many of them had very strong political, economic views for the countries. These views were to make sure that the resources get back to the hands of African people. They made sure that they eliminated. As they were eliminated, the youth of Africa has a disconnect with the elders, where we are not communicating with our elders to know what actually happened. So many young Africans at the moment, we are fighting for citizenry in the political process that doesn't fundamentally change the conditions of the people, right? We're not addressing, like I speak for the Congo. When we are organizing to have a new president in, it doesn't change the fact that in a country that has so much wealth, the Congolese people are not able to determine the price of cobalt. It's determined in the London Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. That we don't even have control of our lands, but they do even testing there. So the role of the African youth today.
We don't determine the price of what goes. We don't determine the price of what
cocoa,
comes gold,
yeah, exactly.
everything.
So with the current situation, what I would like to propose to young Africans who are watching is the importance, one, for us to connect, even if you have the challenge of languages. I will let you know that Patrice Lumumba did not speak English. He was in Accra in 1958 and somehow communicated with Kwame Nkrumah around the vision of a united Africa. So my call to young Ghanaians, as they're hearing, our young Africans who are watching it across the African continent, are they in touch with young Congolese who are mobilizing and organizing for a new Congo to create a new political and economic system where our land gets back in the hands of the people. If we don't have control of our land, it doesn't matter which president we have, it doesn't matter which form of government we have, because we still don't have control of what we produce. So if we get there, we'll get back closer to the Pan-African project. And the Pan-African project was a socialist, united Africa. If we don't get to that, we will never be free. And we'll continue to have governments who invite the U.S. To set up a military base. I don't know which government did that. And
present governments did that.
I'm a guest of Ghana.
President did that. You should just see that document. You would be amazed.
The entire African continent is watching, but there are many people even outside of Ghana who are supporting Ghanaians who are standing up. So Ghanaians should know that they are not alone in the fight to stop U.S. military on the African continent. Africa does not need the U.S. military. African people need the basic needs to be met so that they can live another day. They don't have to worry about what's going to happen to their families. So that's also a message for the Ghanaians who are watching, that we are with you in the struggle to stop U.S. military, because we in the Congo, we have seen the effect of U.S. military support to Rwanda and Uganda and what it has done to our country, where we've lost millions of Congolese. And we will hate to see that happen across West Africa or even in Ghana. That Ghanaians have to wake up for that.
You need to come back. We need to have a whole show on that. What do you say?
I will be back.
A whole show on that.
I will be back for
because
that.
It's, I mean, we can sit and talk about why it's, you know, it's a bad thing to do. We can say that for 2 hours. But it helps to hear from, you know, people who have perhaps seen it firsthand, you know, the dangers and all it can do to any group of people. So that would be a great show to have. Let's just look at social justice movement and perhaps the role of the youth. And I'm asking this question because there are reports of the deaths of 2 key youth leaders over the past month. And very briefly, this will be my last but one question.
There are many youth groups fighting on the ground. I will invite people to learn more about a youth group called 4e Voie, which is the 4th way. They put their lives on the line. Their leaders are attacked. They're put in prison left and right. What they're seeking is partnership with people on the outside to lift up their voice, because they're courageous to stand up against a brutal regime. The challenge is whenever you are in prison, when no one knows that you're in prison, it can be demoralizing. But when you are in prison and you know that people outside even know your name and they're lifting up your name, right? You will hear that in jail, because the guards will come and say, why are people talking about you in Ghana? Why are people talking about you in Nigeria? Why are people talking about South Africa? That it's important to create a solidarity for political prisoners in Congo. Same thing is happening in Morocco. They also need support for political prisoners. But specific for the Congo, lifting up the names of those who are on the front lines is a form of protection for the noble cause that they want to see a new Congo. They're not picking up a gun. They're not picking up a grenade. They say, we've tried those and it hasn't worked at this time. What they need is African solidarity to resolve African problems. And Congolese youth are waiting for all Africans to join them in the struggle to regain control of the country. And hopefully, that's an invitation to you, that you could come to the Congo on July 13th, 2031. Do you know why that date is important?
No.
It's a very historic date. It's my 50th birthday in the Congo. There will be peace that day, July 13th, 2031. 50 years old, we will be on the Congo River. We'll be eating malangwa, which is a fish from the Congo River. We'll listen to Congolese music that all Africans know, how it's nice. And we'll go across the Congo River and actually reminisce that there was a guy who came to the show talking about a peaceful Congo, and it actually happened. And that's my goal, that when I'm turning 50, I will be in the Congo, in a peaceful Congo with everyone who's here, to make sure that we can say we're able to achieve it the same way we achieved it with South Africa.
That just made me sad.
You should be happy.
That just made me sad. I'm sorry. That just made me sad. Yeah. I said last, but one question I lied.
Yeah.
Okay. So the African story is not pleasant. It's not pleasant. And I've been sitting in this chair for a bit, and I have spoken to, I think perhaps the most reflective for me was when I spoke to the then UNAIDS country director, and we're just talking about his experiences in Ghana. He comes from Eritrea, I think, and he was given that example, and he had and I'm saying this because of the connection issue you just raised about how we need to connect and all of that, and how it's important. And the average African hasn't been to any African country, knows next to nothing about the next African country. And yet we all have been outside. Some of us are British educated or American educated, or all these, and we take pride in that. How important is this? Sorry guys, I know they are signaling me to end. I'm going to end in a bit. How important is this connection, and what form should it take? Let me see why I'm asking this question. Should, for instance, that connection be in music, like you said, because music is good, should it be in what we wear? Should it be in us being able to understand perhaps some basics in languages? Or are those just superficial? Should it transcend those things? I don't know. I'm just, because conversations like these always leave me in despair. I'm just like, oh God, how are we going to do this? The average Ghanaian youth, the average 22, 23-year-old Ghanaian doesn't care about the Congo. What doesn't know much about. Here's what I'm saying. This is our reality. This is our reality. There may be 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, Ghanaian youth who might be passionate about Africa, but that's not the norm. It's not. And how are we going to achieve this? How are we going to achieve this connection? How are we going to make sure that we give me the word, reconscientize ourselves to the extent that we become passionate again about Africa? Because those who came before us were passionate about Africa. My dad is very passionate about Africa. Mr. Heneku is passionate about Africa. We are not, and that's the truth.
So I will contradict you on this one.
Okay,
the reason why I will contradict you is last year we were invited at the University of Ghana by students from the University of Ghana were organizing a Pan-African meeting. They brought many people from around the world. When we were at the meeting, there was a young man by the name of Jean-Marie Kalonji who was in jail. We actually asked them, the student which presented the story, there is a young Congolese who is in jail who needs solidarity. Can you help? These young students at the University of Ghana took a video camera, filmed themselves, saying that they are in solidarity with Congolese political prisoner, one of them named Jean-Marie Kalonji, and we asked that the Congolese government release him. So we have a dozen videos of young Africans who attended that meeting who sent this video of solidarity. So I know when Africans actually know what is happening in the Congo, they will move.
I agree with you.
So the question now is, how can we get this show that we are filming across the entire African continent so that Africans first know what is happening in the Congo, and then let them decide how they will do. But I am confident that when Africans hear about the situation in the Congo, they look at Congolese and they'll see that they are brothers and sisters, because it could happen in any African country. But they have to get the information. So the challenge is not necessarily young Africans being desensitized, which is true in some extent. I don't say that it's false, but I do believe also that they are not informed. They have the wrong source of information. I've met young Africans who applaud Paul Kagame of Rwanda, with the president of Rwanda. This is a president that has bloods of millions of Africans. But where do they get the information from? They read The Economist, the New York Times. They read other media that does not actually cover what is happening in Africa. But when they get the right information, they actually understand the connection I made. There was a young man before Facebook and Twitter who got on a plane because there was a delegation coming to Accra, came to the Pan-African Congress that took place in 1958, met with Kwame Nkrumah and created a Pan-African project, and they were able to, at least on the Ghana side, achieve some of the visions that came out of another meeting. Today, we have other channels that we can use. I mean, I can't throw names about Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. Young people know how to connect. They will figure out how they will make the connection, but they have to have the right material so that they use the means that we have to present the African story differently, which is not a desperate situation. It's
not desperate.
Here is the story that keeps me up. 35-year-old Patrice Lumumba shocked the entire world when they didn't think that Congo could do it. Imagine this, right? You didn't have any weapon, and we were under colonial rule. How dare you, at 30-year-old, you're going to tell the Belgians to leave the Congo? Like, think about that mindset, that you have these young Congolese who woke up one day and said they're going to be mad and crazy, they're going to transform the Congo, and we're going to become independent. People laughed at them. 1959 mobilizing after coming from the 1958 Congress, nobody believed that could be possible, but they achieved it, which is a great achievement. That's an inspiration to me, saying, if a 35-year-old Patrice Lumumba could, with his team, win independence, what am I doing now that I'm 37 years old to actually help my people gain now economic independence? So sharing the story of resistance that existed is not just Patrice Lumumba, it's Kimpa Vinta. She was 21 years old in the 1700s and fought the Portuguese in the Congo, had thousands of people. Imagine a 21-year-old young woman in the Congo with thousands of people following her fighting the Portuguese. You have Simon Kimbangu, who also fought the Belgians in the 1910s. You have Patrice. The names are countless. Are we going to tell the story of resistance of our people and what they achieved, and say the desperation is that we have not continued the fight, that it's now our responsibility to pick up where they left off and we continue the struggle? That's my inspiration.
Great. I will take inspiration from that. I mean, great. It's great that you end the show not on a gloomy note. You are telling us that there is hope. Take inspiration from this, and I like that. But you still did not answer my question, though. Because I want to know how you're going to achieve the connection. How are you going to bring these stories to the doorsteps of everybody? Somebody would come to somebody would come to a conference on Pan-Africanism because that person already has that passion for Pan-Africanism. How about the person who doesn't care about Pan-Africanism?
But they live it. It's in the fabric. Pan-Africanism doesn't have to be something that's intellectual. People live that. I gave you an example also that many Africans know Congolese music. Yes. To me, it's Pan-Africanism. From one perspective, something that's been produced in the Congo has actually connected Africans into a cultural fabric that when they hear the sounds, they know this is Congolese music. Right? Now, how do you turn that? You go to a party, you hear Fali Pupa or Kofi Olomide and others say, while I'm hearing this music, do you guys know that Congo is in a challenge now? Are you going to have those conversations, right?
That's what I need from you, Kambale Musavuli. I need you to perhaps give me specific things, specific sites, for instance, where instead of going on Instagram, perhaps to look at a page like Shigle Freak, you know, to go and look at the latest trends in doing eyebrows or the latest Kylie Jenner lipstick.
Exactly.
I could rather use my data to go there and learn about the Congo, learn about Patrice Lumumba, learn about his life, you know, because it's important, isn't it? So help me before we leave, and this for the notes on which we will leave. Give us some sites, give us some.
You reminded me that I'm better self-promoting. But the first thing that I will ask.
Exactly what I want you to do. I want you to self-promote.
So,
and promote Pan-Africanism in the process. Yeah.
So I work for an organization called Friends of the Congo. Our website is friendsofthecongo.org. It's an
friendsofthecongo.org.
Yes. It's an advocacy organization. We do two things. One, we support youth inside of the Congo who are fighting to transform the country. And on the outside, we shape the narrative of the Congo and raise consciousness of the people so they know what's actually happening in the Congo. And we believe that the Congo movement, as I mentioned earlier, is as important as the South Africa movement was yesterday. So we mobilize people to say, we need to make sure that we support Congolese who are trying to transform the country. And when people go to our website, friendsofthecongo.org, they can sign up and they're going to actually find more around it. Specifically for the youth movement in Congo, there is a movement in the Congo of Congolese youth. It's called Telema. It's in Lingala. It's a term meaning rise up. Telema, yeah. Telema. It means rise up. It's a word in Lingala. It's also a hashtag. The website for that is telema.org, which is TELEMA.org. That site has been created to provide information about what young Congolese are doing, especially when there are political prisoners who are Congolese youth who are arrested. We provide information there, and also we mobilize resources, very basic resources that Congolese are doing. They need projectors. You know why? They're doing mobile cinema right now. So on June 16th in the Congo, young Congolese projected in a neighborhood in Congo a movie called Sarafina and spoke about the struggle of youth in Soweto and what they did and why it's important for Congolese youth to mobilize. All they needed was a projector. So they used a projector. They had speakers, Bluetooth speakers. They went to a community and projected on the wall. Right? So they're doing this mobile cinema, want to conscientize the masses, and they need material support for the work that they do. But as I mentioned, if you go to the website, friendsofthecongo.org or telema.org, you will be directly connected to the youth movement with the people who are fighting for the Congo. And I want the ideas of the people themselves, because you know your community better. You know if I need to get people out somewhere on a Friday, this is how I will mobilize my community. So you take whatever you're already doing and you add the Congo in it. If you're a party promoter, do a party for the Congo. Put some information about it. Play some Congolese music and stop the music and say something about the Congo, right? If you are a journalist and cover the Congo more, provide analysis. If you have a newspaper, get articles on the Congo. So whatever you do it for the Congo. So you don't change necessarily everything that you do. You just add Congo into your regular routine of what you're already doing every day.
Thank you. Let me read just two of the messages that we have received. This one says, please, are you people following the happenings in the Cameroons, where the English-speaking part that was before 1960 was a part of Nigeria, are presently engaged in a war of independence from French Cameroon. It is alleged the Nigerian government, in connivance with the French Cameroon government, abducted the leaders of Southern Cameroons on asylum in Nigeria and handed them to the French Cameroon government. This took place in Nera Hotel in Abuja since January 5th, 2008. They have been held incommunicado since then. Well, I believe you did not watch last week's show, because if you did, that was the whole point of last week's show, and we thoroughly discussed this issue. So please stay watching. Okay, this one says, hi the couch, you do a great job, keep it up. I'm following you from the Gambia, Onyx. And he says, right, we have less people protecting the motherland. And the most critical point is we are desperately in lack of global actions towards a unification. Very good point about the need to link or to push young people of different African countries to know each other better. I'm guessing your name is Onyx. You know, I'm guessing. Onyx, thank you for watching. Thank you for sending in your views. And yeah, he agrees with most of the things that she said. Well, we are ending the show, but let's end on a visionary note. Can I say that? Let's look at the vision of Kwame Nkrumah and the vision of Patrice Lumumba. We may know it, but just reiterate on that so we go home on the vision of these two great men.
Patrice Lumumba came from a community that saw what the Belgians did to the people. He's from Katakokombe. One of his leaders, Lupungu II, was hung by Albert II of Belgium, Albert I of Belgium, because he asked for Congo to be returned to the people. That was in the 1920s. Patrice Lumumba was born in 1925, so sometime in the later time of 1920s, that's when he was hung in front of his people. When you think about even the education that he had, people may say that he was uneducated. But what I say is, he sat at the feet of the elders, and they told him something very important, Likambo Yamabele, which means the struggle of the land. He left his community to mobilize for Congolese people to control their lands. And in everything that he did, it was that he wanted the Congo and Congo's resources to benefit the people of the Congo. And he made clear to any Western nation who want to control the Congo, this was his stand. And that's why it was unpopular. But what's beautiful about his vision, this hasn't ended. The young Congolese who rose up in 2015 are fighting the same struggle today, that we will never stop fighting until Congo is back in the hand of the Congolese. And we understand why it's important for us to do that, because of what we explained throughout the whole show. And what inspired to me is an Anglophone African and a Francophone African set in Accra to discuss the Congo. I'm a Francophone African, and you are an Anglophone African, right? I'm not talking about Kwame Nkrumah or Lumumba, I'm talking about you and I. We are sitting right now in Accra 60 years later, when they were also sitting here in Accra thinking about Africa. The question for us is, 60 years later, will we have achieved African unity? I believe we can. The question is, as we finish the show, wherever we both go, are we going to continue to unify Africa? If we're able to do that, the visions is going to come into fruition, and we can say that we carry on the torch to unify Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this show. Well, viewers, this is the end of the show. Let me say thank you again.
No problem.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much to Mr. Kambale Musavuli, who happens to be the spokesperson for the Friends of the Congo. Now, please do this for me. I need you to go and check out the website. That's friendsofthecongo.org. friendsofthecongo.org, and also telema.org. We need to stay educated. We need to know. We need to keep questioning. We need to keep appreciating, and most importantly, we need to connect. We need to connect. Like he rightly said, the vision of a unified Africa is possible, but it is possible only through you and me. This has been our show. We will be back tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Yeah, cash too. Yeah, black. Yeah. Oh. No. I know that nobody, I know that nobody, I know that nobody, I know that nobody, If love is blind, then I must be blind for you. Even the mountain high, I will climb up there with you. I don't get no money, all I have with me is surely. But if you give me your love, you never regret to. Oh, I did it, oh, just you me, my tell it. I don't know what you do to me, yo, but this your love, the sweet pass, honey. I don't know what you do, but I know I'll come out for the inside. I don't got nobody, yo. No. nobody, oh.